Agora, para darmos início ao evento, convido a jornalista e editora especial Arte Brasileiros, Simonetta Persichetti. Por gentileza.
Nossa, que cheio! Boa tarde a todos. Eu também, antes de mais nada, agradeço a generosidade da Arte Brasileiros me convidar pelo segundo ano para organizar esse Talks e organizar o especial da São Paulo Arte Foto. Agradeço a presença de todos vocês, a Juliana já avisou. O ano passado nós falamos sobre reflexão, esse ano nós falamos sobre perspectivas. Várias tentativas existem para definirmos o que seria uma fotografia contemporânea. Se no começo do século XXI nós tínhamos várias certezas, hoje nós só temos perguntas e questões. A impossibilidade de definir o que é uma arte contemporânea. É isso que nós vamos tentar fazer nesses 2 dias, conversando, discutindo e fazendo o que eu mais gosto de fazer e que acredito vocês também, que é pensar fotografia. Agradeço também a SP-Arte por me dar mais uma vez a oportunidade de estar aqui. Muito obrigada a vocês por estarem aqui. Chamo, então, agora, para começar a conversar comigo, o Jeff Rosenheim, ok? Que é o curador-chefe do Metropolitan de Nova York, curador-chefe de fotografia. Please, here with me. You have to take the microphone. Now I have to speak in Portuguese. Okay. Jeff, muito obrigado por ter vindo aqui. Muito obrigado pela entrevista que você me concedeu antecipadamente para a Arte Brasileiros, né? Foi mais uma maneira da gente conhecer um pouco mais o seu trabalho. E eu gostaria que você falasse justamente um pouco dessa coleção do Metropolitan, dessa coleção que você mesmo define como algo enciclopédico, né, do início da fotografia aos dias de hoje. É muito grandioso, se eu não me engano, são 75.000 fotografias. It's okay? Yeah?
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, correct.
Yes.
Yeah. I did my homework.
Approximately.
Yeah, I did
Mais
my
ou
homework.
menos.
Yeah. E eu gostaria, então, que você começasse a falar sobre essa coleção, o papel do Metropolitan na coleção de fotografia e divulgação da fotografia.
Right. Good. Very good. This translation is a little complicated, but...
You understand? Okay. I can speak in Italian if you prefer.
I think so. So thank you all for coming today, and standing room only. Hello out there. It's a pleasure to be in Brazil. It's my first week in Brazil. It's about my 3rd or 4th day, and I just want to thank all those I have met, the artists and collectors, patrons. I can't thank you enough for inviting me into your homes and to see the art and the culture in this great city, and it's a great honor to be here. What I've done, and let me see if I can do this correctly. Let's see. What I've done is to make a selection of pictures that are in the collection of the Metropolitan. I've worked at the Met almost 30 years. It's, I'm happy to say, more than half of my life. And I've had the great pleasure of seeing the creation of a department. The museum has been collecting photography as a fine art since the early part of the 20th century, but we did not have our own department until 1992. I started at the Met in '87. And the great pleasure of seeing this medium come to the larger world. We were always interested in photography, but we did not really have a way to show it on our own. We were not an independent department until 1992. And in the time before that, in those years before that, we were doing really good work. But since then, I think we've really established the medium of photography in a really good place, at least in New York and at least at the Metropolitan. So I'm going to share some of the treasures. I've organized the slides, and again, we can discuss them. Simonetta and I can discuss them. I've organized my slides in a kind of way that I'm showing portraits first, just to get us started, then some landscapes, some abstractions, some pictures that are currently on view, and some coming attractions. And that's how I've organized it. And I'm going to take these headphones off my neck, and I'm going to stand around because I can't see what you're looking at. So pardon me for 1 second.
Do you prefer to stay here?
No, I think we can just do this. I'm pretty good on my feet. Anyway, again, welcome everybody. This is going to be a kind of tutorial through the encyclopedic collection of the Metropolitan. My translator is where? She's hiding in the box. Am I going too fast? She's saying yes. She's using a hand signal that I've never seen before. She's asking me to go outside and not come back. Anyway, this is a picture we just acquired. One of the things I've done, I don't know if there's a pointer here. Is there a pointer? No. The bottom line has the number of the year date of the acquisition, just to give you some ideas about when we've collected something. I was in Paris and I saw this picture in an auction, and for very little money, all of you know what a daguerreotype is because I know you're great collectors of the whole history of photography. But this is an image that's about this big, and it's a work of an anonymous picture maker. We may find out who it was. It was made around 1850, and it's a little image on a sheet of copper that has been silver plated, placed in a camera and exposed. Why I like this picture, it's any of us who have kids or are around kids know what it's like to get them to pose. So posing is this thing that's a deeply connected issue about whether the picture is more truthful if it's unposed or posed. This is something that anybody working in portrait photography has to deal with. Here's a father trying to get his son, I believe, to look at the camera. It's a good beginning for us. This is an image that is one of my favorites in the collection. We acquired it in 2005, so about 10 years ago. And it's one of the earliest pictures of a Native American. This is a man who was a Kansa, which is one of the Indian nations in the US. He's wearing a bear claw necklace. Again, it's a daguerreotype from the mid-1850s. And in fact, one of the sad truths about the medium of photography, not just in daguerreotypy, is that we often don't know who made the pictures, and we don't know when they were made, and we have lost the knowledge of who was being depicted. And in America, we have a terrible history of the depiction of the native people that were in our land. This is an exception. This is a whole plate daguerreotype, about 8.5 by 6.5 inches, a little less than 20-something centimeters in vertical height. We know his name, the subject's name. His name is Nosher. We know what Indian group he's from, what indigenous group he's from. He's a Kansa, and we know the date that it was made. This is a huge exception, and it's also a beautifully made plate that has a three-dimensionality that I find remarkable. His earrings are depicted by adding silver to the plate. There's a little bit of color, of course, before color photography, that is added in his tignon. The hair is wrapped. It's a stunning object. Why was it made? In photography, we have to ask always, why was it made and for whom was it made? This is something different than in painting and different than in filmmaking and different than in any other medium, but this issue of portraiture asks the question, it was made for him. He was on his way with other tribal members to try to negotiate a treaty with the US government who were going to buy his land and move his people off it, and he stopped in St. Louis, Missouri, which is on the west of the Mississippi, where I'm from actually. And he sat for his portrait because his people did not think he was going to return back home. It adds another level of meaning, but we needed to know where it was made, why it was made, and for whom it was made, that it survives as a miracle. We have a great collection called the Gilman Collection. It was a private-held company in New York, and they built a collection. We acquired the collection en masse. It was our largest acquisition ever. It was about 8,000 photographs. This is a picture that we put on the cover of our book called The Waking Dream. It's a picture made by an artist named Aguado de las Marismas, and he worked in many different genres. But what does it mean to make a picture of someone without their face from behind? In art, we talk about recto verso. In portraiture, we have now a tradition of the reverse picture, the picture of the back of the head. Again, why was it made? Was it because of the coiffure? Was it because of the beautiful beadwork? Was it because of her lovely couture? We don't know, but it asks more questions than it answers. And if someone asks me what I like about photography, it seems to ask more questions than it answers. Some photographs are great because it answers questions. Some of my favorites are great because they do not. This is one of my favorite pictures by one of the great women artists of her day, of any day, Julia Margaret Cameron. She's a British photographer. She was given a camera late in life by her family, and she started photographing her milieu. And she made pictures that were often allegorical. This is a picture entitled Mountain Nymph, Sweet Liberty. So it's a documentary image of a person, but it is being used to make a comment on storytelling, a little bit about myth, but the power of the expression is what carries the meaning of the picture. It's a stunning object. It's a large albumin print. So I'm just going to continue forward with different types of portraiture that represent these ideas that are throughout the Met's collection, and it's an honor to work there. I am just the custodian of the collection. I've brought many of these works into the museum's collection, but mostly they're there for you. They're there for the world. We are a collection that is open to the public. We're 7 days a week. We have a study room. Any of you who come to New York, I welcome you to make an appointment. First come, first serve. Every day of the week, we only have a few pictures on view at any time, but we have students and artists and collectors coming in and looking at our works in our study room, and that is one of the most beautiful things, because you can take an artist who thinks they know what they're doing, and they come in to see the objects from the history, and it transforms them. It's one of the most powerful things that these encyclopedic collections can do. Thomas Eakins is a famous American painter. He's a figure painter, and he used photography. He was the first artist in America that I know that required, when he was teaching his students, to learn the new medium of photography. This is a self-portrait with one of his students by the waterside, and here he is on the left with his student on the right. These are pictures that are made by using platinum process, which is not a silver medium, but platinum is also a light-sensitive medium, and he had to make a special enlarged image, and he used a solar enlarger. Very difficult to do. He did not make copy negatives. He put his small format negative and made it large by tracking the sun in a kind of motorized way. Those of you who've made enlargements know how hard that must be before electricity. Probably one of the most important pictures in the Met's collection is this enlarged platinum print of a blind woman. I begged the question earlier about why was the picture made and what is the relationship between the subject and the photographer, and therefore it implicates us. So here's a picture of a woman who cannot return the gaze of the camera. She's blind. We have this picture because Alfred Stieglitz, who was the sort of great advocate of the medium of photography, was our first great patron, and he gave us 500 photographs made between when he started his sort of camera club around the turn of the century until about 1920. This is a picture from 1916, right at the beginning of the US involvement in World War I. And I think I see this symbolically in that way. And I'm just going to move forward a little faster to discuss the language of portraiture. So this is Lucia Moholy photographing her husband, Laszlo. We've all done this. Don't make my picture one more time. Please stop. Our our first impulse when we don't want to make a photograph is either to put our hand out or to turn our back. This is a picture that's that moment of modernist image making, and I find it just a beautiful object. I try to tell my students today, I know Simonetta is a professor, I too teach adjunct at multiple schools, and those of us who are now using digital cameras, you know, the camera focuses for you. You have to fight that, because out of focus is so much a part of focus. It's so much a part of the language of photography, and this is a picture which really deals with that very thing. One of the artists I'm most interested in is Walker Evans. We have acquired his archive. In fact, the Met has 2 archives, both of which I brought to the museum. Walker Evans, the great documentarian of the 1930s, and Diane Arbus, and I'll get to that in a minute. Here is Walker Evans in the middle of our Great Depression in 1936, photographing African-American barbers in the South along the river of the Mississippi in the state of Mississippi. They're posing for him. It's a Sunday morning. They're waiting for customers. It's wintertime. It's cold. And if you can read the signs, I don't know if you can read it, there's the Savoy barbershop on the right and the New Deal barbershop on the left. This idea of dueling barbers waiting for customers is a beautiful idea to me. But just the way the light holds the wall, the clapboard wall, is very much a part of what Evans was interested in. He liked using a certain type of light that creates this slant, and you see it in this picture. One of the artists, I must say, for me, being able to know the artists I'm collecting is the greatest privilege. I don't always get to do that. I didn't know Julia Margaret Cameron. I did not get to know Thomas Eakins, but I knew Helen Levitt very well. And I wouldn't be here speaking with you today if I hadn't met her. She took me under her wing, and she showed me what she had done. I went to her home. I bought her photographic paper. She printed in her bathtub pretty much her whole life. And this is a picture made around 99th Street and Park Avenue. Any of you who have been to New York, I can take you when you come to New York to visit with me. I'll take you exactly where this picture was made. There are very few pictures that deal with community and the language of serendipity and chance and the privileged eye of the artist than Helen Levitt's work. This is probably the most famous picture I will show you today. This is Robert Frank's great picture made in New Orleans in 1955 on his sort of beat tour across America. We happen to have a stunning object. I lived in New Orleans for many years, and I rode on this streetcar, and I felt like I was living in a Robert Frank photograph whenever I did. What's interesting about this picture is the relationship of the figures in it, and this is a time of the division of races in America, and basically if you were black, you had to sit in the back of the bus, and here we're seeing it explicitly in a photograph that was made before the Great Change. Gary Winogrand was my teacher. I've been happy to say I've done shows of Robert Frank, I've done exhibitions of Helen Levitt, I've done exhibitions of Robert Frank, as I said, and Gary Winogrand. It's a pleasure to share these with you, and these are just the portraits, and now we're going to really run fast. This is a picture made in a nightclub in New York that's long gone, called El Morocco, and you can see that the artist is intimate with the subjects. The placement of the camera, the position of the figure, obviously Winogrand is dancing on the floor and trying to replace the gentleman there in my mind. Last, I think, of the portraits I'm going to show you is a picture by Diane Arbus. It's in my current exhibition right now at the Met Breuer, and it's a picture made just steps from where my desk is at the museum. Arbus is well known for her portrait work, and I will discuss a little bit more about that a little later. This is a picture of a young boy who's exasperated with her, that is, with the artist. And in fact, our print, which we acquired in 2001, has an inscription, "Exasperated Boy." It's not the official title, "Child with Toy Hand Grade." It's "Exasperated Boy." He's struggling to satisfy what he thinks she wants out of the picture. Oh yeah, I forgot this. Cindy Sherman. The great transformation in the 90s of what a photograph should and might do. She's obviously posing for her own picture in the guise of a B movie star. We have a lovely print of it. I have a few more. Warhol's self-portrait. This is one of those large Polaroids that were made with a special camera, and I'm particularly keen on this picture. I don't mean to be standing in front of you. I'm going to come over here now. Stand in front of these guys. Warhol's use of the camera was very critical and important to the development of his idea of what his painting work would and could be. He was a terrific artist, and we have a very good collection. Just a few landscapes. It's a little easier for me to understand how the history of the museum's collection was built because of the power of French art in the Metropolitan's collection. We have an excellent collection of 19th century French landscape painting and his whole history of Western art and the power of French imagery. Well, we also have a great collection of art from the 1850s and 60s and 70s. Gustave Le Gray is probably the great teacher. He introduced a new technique, and so many of the students of photography in France were influential. Great view of the harbor and the English and the French fleets in parallel movement. I'm very interested in building our collection of photographs of all of the Americas from the Mexico South, and I've been building a collection of a French artist working in the 1860s in the Yucatan in Mexico, Desiree Charnay. This is a terrific picture. There are 3 figures in it. It's like Where's Waldo? You can't really see them in this slide, but they are there. And this idea of photography and archaeology and anthropology is a subject we all have to take seriously. Probably my favorite picture maker of the Americas in the 19th century is Carlton Watkins. Watkins was working for the railroads, and he made these kinds of pictures which have this amazing balance of the industrial and enterprise with the natural landscape. And this is the great challenge for all of us, is to how can we as a society live in this world and also try to retain its beauty. And those two things, nature and culture, don't match very well. We all know this, but very few picture makers better than Watkins could make pictures that balance the railroad in what it is and the beautiful landscape. Charles Marville, photographing at the time of the Haussmannization of Paris, the destruction of old Paris for the creation of new Paris. This is a perfect photographic project. It has political overtones, and yet he made stunning views that were hugely influential on artists today. Steichen, the great picture maker, born in Luxembourg, but really essentially an American, advocated by Stieglitz. This is a view of the great Flatiron Building in New York. And this is an image before color photography. It was done with bichromate materials, and in fact, this is actually a platinum print applied over with coloration. And these are, basically it's a tone poem. It's like a Whistlerian tone poem. Charles Sheeler, my friend Chris Phillips worked on a project at the Met in 87, 88, and we showed it in 89. This is the great picture of the crisscross conveyors. By Sheeler, who was a modernist painter and also used photography. I show this last of this sort of landscape series, and maybe Simonetta and I can have a conversation and then I'll continue on. So Ruf was in Germany at the time of the bombings of the World Trade Center, and he made this picture, and we immediately, I was working at the desk, we had the study room that I've invited you to that day. Yes, and the world changed a bit. It's changing, obviously, again. But this is a picture which is intentionally pixelated. So this is a work of art from 2004, but it looks at this image. And so he captured the image from his own either television or his own computer monitor. And it's intentionally, as I said, pixelated. A little bit of Ache. I like this sort of surrealist moment in all art, and particularly in photography, and I just show this in this little section. Why don't we pause here, and maybe we can have a question, and then we can continue up again. Okay? Yes?
Okay.
This is Man Ray. It's a good stopping point. it's a good pausing point.
Ok? Jeff, obrigada pela maravilhosa aula de história da fotografia que você deu, pelo seu passeio, como você conseguiu recontar a história, passado, presente. E não nego que eu fiquei com um pouco de inveja de você ter acesso e ter nas mãos tão maravilhosas fotografias, né? Quando eu escrevi um texto sobre você, depois que eu te entrevistei, eu dei o nome ao texto de um apaixonado pela fotografia. E não me arrependo, porque você provou aqui que é um apaixonado pela imagem. Mas, tirando essa questão da tua paixão, do teu prazer, da Diane Arbus, que você adora, você só trouxe uma, mas e do Walker Evans, como se forma uma coleção de um museu como o Metropolitan, né? Qual é a decisão, embora você tenha falado um pouco disso, qual é a decisão de dizer, isso vale, isso eu vou atrás, ou isso não me interessa?
Yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, we try to build on strength. So we have a very good 19th century collection and a very good between the wars collection and a very good mid-20th century collection. We don't have a good collection of the art of Brazil. We do not have a good collection, proper collection of the art of Asia, with the camera, that is. We are an encyclopedic collection, so I have the support of peers around. There are 17 curatorial departments at the Metropolitan Museum. So I'm working with 600 other curators who are my colleagues and are warning me I'm not paying attention to this artist in this place at this time. And we are collecting everything from Greek and Roman art to, obviously, antiquity to the moment. We build on strength, but we also look to fill gaps. And we have a great base, but it is a pleasure every day going and looking at pictures. And I must say that those of us who are not picture makers, and I'm not, this room is filled with a lot of picture makers, you get pleasure every day about going into your studio or going out on the street and seeing something you have never seen before. I get the same pleasure by looking at work in our collection, and I'll be honest with you, that I have never seen before. The collection is vast. It is like the world. And I must say that working with my colleagues, they are very, what is the word? Acquisitive. So I am responsible for putting new pictures in the collection, but we have to test them against what we have. We also are looking very carefully at what you're doing in the museums here, what is going on at MoMA down the street, what's going on at the Whitney and the Guggenheim at ICP. We are trying to pay attention to the field in a very thoughtful way. If ICP or the Museum of Modern Art has a specific example of a work, it's in the work. I consider it part of the community of pictures. Why would I need to collect that example when the artist made certainly one more and a different one? And so we are sharing this responsibility, and actually globally we're sharing this responsibility. So it is a question we ask every day. I will tell you something. What's great about the medium of photography, there are treasures found literally every afternoon. Someone is finding something that they think is worthy of a museum collection, and I want to hear about it. My job is to make sure I get the first call. So when you find something, you have to call me. That's the deal. I can't always acquire it, but I want to see it, I want to know it, I want to be changed by it, I want to be delighted by it, I want to see something I've never seen, and I want to see something I've always seen but never had access to. But I believe in objects. I never acquire anything just from an image. It's not enough for me. I have to see the thing. I'm that traditional on that level. Even if it's born digitally, I need to see it. Now, we have collected digital works that have no physical value. That's another thing. But if the artist is working in any analog or digital and is making objects, I want to see them. I have to see them. And that doesn't mean you have to come to New York to show them to me. But you can introduce me to it one way, but I will have to ultimately see it on my own. And I feel responsible. Nothing goes by my desk that I have not seen and brought into the museum's collection, and I think it's been that way forever. Let me just show a few more pictures, because I think there's something to be said about that. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. So we're just going to run through this because I want to get to something that's on view and then something that's coming soon. Coming attractions. So, you know Cartier-Bresson, we have a really good collection of his pictures in that surrealist moment around in 1932. They're very different from some of the later pictures. Again, I like pictures that are sort of secretive, that tell us only partly what they're really about. Adam Foos is a contemporary artist working in New York, and this picture is called Now. Does anyone know why it's called Now? Does anyone have a guess? Come on. We're both teachers. Because of the movement. What is the movement?
A lot of movement. And the big picture is not in the right way. It's invert. To the right.
Was it made with a camera or not? That's a trick question.
Foi feita com uma câmera ou não?
I think so. I don't know.
You're right, you don't know. In fact, I didn't know. It's not made with a camera. It is a kind of photogram. Now is when he tells his assistant to drop the bucket of water on the sheet of paper, and then he fires a flash. This entire thing is created by light and the movement of water caught by a flash, a strobe. Now is we make the picture. And this is what it is. It's a huge picture. It's taller than I am. It's 2 meters tall. And it's a great picture from the beginning early beginning of his work. Oh yeah, more of my favorites.
Let's see.
Okay. The very first works of any note acquired by the Met were the nudes that Stieglitz made of his girlfriend at the time, later his wife, Georgia O'Keeffe, the painter. And she is standing in the window of their apartment. And it's a very sexy picture, probably as sexy then as it is today, or today as it was then. These pictures are small and beautiful. We have forgotten, this is a warning to you all, especially to the young picture makers, we have forgotten how to appreciate small objects. They're as powerful as big ones. Don't be caught up in this bullshit.
Thank you so much.
That bigger is better. Bigger is fine, but bigger is as bad as often it is good. Small is no better than big, but it is just as good. Civil War photographs. Photography and the language of war are inextricably driven, and in 1933, during our Depression, we acquired some great, great pictures. I showed this in a big exhibition on the history of war photography, and that is a whole subject we can maybe talk about later. Really, the beginning of photography in England begins with a botanist who wanted to share his botanical specimens with a botanist in Italy. But Italy and England were very far apart, and Talbot could not draw. But Bertoloni in Italy could draw his specimens beautifully. And they exchanged physical specimens, and then Talbot went to his friend Herschel, the scientist, and said, there's got to be a better way. This is a picture from 1839. It's a photogram of plant specimens that were sent in the mail to an Italian botanist. And they had this epistolary exchange, a letter exchange, including photographs, in 1839. Okay. Whoa, Man Ray again. I like pictures that are made of things that don't make sense and then have meaning in the picture. There's a perfect example. It's called Compass, 1920. Here's another Adam Foos photogram. This is what I wanted to get to. So my current show, and then we're going to stop, is of Diane Arbus's unknown early work from 1956 to 62. When I acquired her archive, I realized that there were so many pictures I had never seen before. This is an exhibition currently on view in the old Whitney building, and it shows pictures like this one of a taxi driver, or this one of a man at the beach. a man in hat, trunk, socks, and shoes, or this powerful lady on the bus. Arbus was unlike her entire community of artists, Robert Frank, Walker Evans, Helen Levitt, Gary Winogrand, Lee Friedlander. They wanted to photograph in this genre of street photography, but they did not want their subjects to see them making pictures. Arbus wanted a performative relationship with her subjects, and she achieved it. This is the backwards man. He's a contortionist in his hotel room. And this famous picture of the twins. I'll just tell a little anecdote. I put this up in an exhibition in 2005 at the Met, and I got a call from the bookstore. And we had made a poster of this image. And the lady who ran the bookstore called me up and said, "Jeff, you must come down, the twins are here." And in fact, grown up, they arrived at the museum. What other medium is like this? They arrived at the museum, and they were signing our poster for people who were buying them. And the dumb part of this is I didn't ask them to make me one, but there they were. They were in identical outfits, different color, and their mother was there, and she told me this really sweet story about this picture that for her, it just reminds her that she had made these dresses, and she remembered her children wearing them, and that she had just let them down. They had been sewed up, and she had unsewed them, and there they are, Colleen and Kathleen. Oh yeah, last thing, coming up, my next show in April is of Irving Penn, and if everything goes well, you will not have to come to New York to see it. We are doing a show, and that show is hopefully coming to Sao Paulo, and more about that later. But these are the pictures, some of which that we will show. Small tradesmen in London, Paris, and New York. Thank you.
Bom é well. Bom, well. Bom, outra pergunta que eu queria te fazer. De todas as fotos que você mostrou, se eu não me perdi, a mais recente é do atentado ao 11 de setembro. É claro que a função de um museu é muito diferente de uma galeria. Como vocês estão lidando com a contemporaneidade? O MET abriu para vídeo, para novas plataformas da fotografia. Como o museu lida com essa contemporaneidade e não com a historicidade, que de alguma forma já está sedimentada?
So the question for me about contemporary, we are collecting everything that is being made today and yesterday. We have a show up right now that is of pictures that were made by Paul Graham in his last project. It's a British artist. But most importantly, I would tell you that we are collecting video. We are collecting extensively video. It was a little hard to show it here. We are also collecting pictures that are being made and shown in galleries as we speak. My slideshow did not exactly reveal 100% of that, but it is there. But the question about how we are doing it, for better or for worse, I feel like we do not have to rush to make decisions, that we are looking in we have a long view. And that sort of telescopic lens allows us to see patterns. We do not feel we have to be at the forefront and be always having to show the art of our time. Not to say that we're not collecting it, and we are collecting it actively. But you're right, the historical perspective is one that we are going to maintain. So what do we do about it? What we do about it is that we look very carefully, we travel, we are four, and the four of us are seeing what we can and how we can. So many of the artists I've met on this last 3 days, and many of the gallerists I've met and the collectors want to know the same question, which is, are you going to buy my work? Are you going to put artists that you have seen in the collection? Yes, but it may be a year or 2 or 5 years from now. But I am fine with that. And I I think that as an institution, we have an obligation to build a collection that is consistent with our understanding of the larger problem of understanding the art of our time. And I quite personally, I'm as interested in contemporary painting and sculpture and printmaking as I am in photography. I'm looking not just at photography, and it would be really tragic if I told you I was only looking at photography. I'm interested in every art that is being made, and I'm looking outside of the traditional arts for that. I mean, the edge of art and what we used to call folk art, which is a difficult word today. I'm looking at what we used to call craft, which is a really difficult word. I'm interested in the ceramic tradition, the printmaking tradition, the weaving tradition. I'm interested in new forms of picture making, and I'm also interested in new forms of communication. And I might not show in the presentation, but it's there. And if it's good, we will get it, I hope. We will understand it, I mean. And we will hopefully get it too.
A sua paixão pela Diane...
Oh.
A sua paixão pela Diane Arbus é uma paixão pessoal, porque você gosta dela, ou você vê que ela tem uma transformação, um momento fundamental na fotografia, de uma fotógrafa que sai de uma fotografia de moda, da Vogue, e fotografa nos anos 60 os que estavam à margem da sociedade e que a sociedade não queria ver. Por que Diane Arbus?
Okay, so one of the great pleasures of working in a city like New York is that it supports a lot of different types of art making. And Diane Arbus emerged at a time in the 1950s when the magazine world was very strong. And it's not surprising that she did build a business with her husband. It didn't satisfy her. And in 1956, she spent a lot of time in discussion with her family. How do I get out of this business that the fashion idiom is tedious and too commercial? And she started realizing that what was on the street, the people she was meeting and seeing on the street, were more important than anything she could make in the studio. And in 1956, she cut it off. She left her partnership with her husband and started making pictures. She numbered a roll of film #1, and those are pictures, some of which I showed, on the streets, in which she was in dialogue, in performance with her subject. You use the term, I'm not sure how you use the term, but her subjects were not that extreme. And now they're commonplace as subjects. But the issue of photographing female impersonators or circus performers, or for that matter, ladies wearing fur coats, the subjects for her were about differences. She feels like the tension, and I do too, between the individual and the society. How do we become the people we want to be? How do we overcome our inherited gender, class, style? How do we become the people we maybe were not born to be? How do we become an individual? And that tension between the individual and the society is what each of those pictures are about. That's beautiful. In sociology, we call it Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. This basic idea, that's what culture is. Culture wants to take the individual and make them a member of the society. It wants to steal the unique thing, the differentness, and make it into the whole. The individual's job is to be a citizen, but also to retain their individuality. That's what artists are. Artists are unable to not express their individuality. That is why so many of us became artists. So Arbus was exploring this very idea in all of those pictures, and she took risks to get there. And I think that her voice, her individuality, her idiosyncrasy, the values that she teaches us are ones that are instructive, not as picture makers, although I think they are too, but as how to live in this world. How do we make sense of it? And she is instructive to me every day.
Nesse sentido, Com essa sua leitura, podemos dizer que ela é contemporânea?
Can we say that she's a contemporary artist?
Okay, so we have a saying that the Metropolitan collects 5,000 years of contemporary art. That basically, we see it all together. But you mean specifically Arbus. I think that if you come to my show, the audience is between 12 and 13 years old and 25 or 26. Arbus has always appealed to individuals in the process of transformation. We all can remember going through puberty. We can remember that terrible anxiety about having to be someone's daughter or son, having to be someone's sister or brother. We have this great artist, Diane Arbus, who explored those liminal stages of change when we are in the process of becoming. She photographed children becoming teenagers, teenagers becoming adults, adults becoming parents, parents becoming old, and people dying. She photographed in the morgue. She photographed in old folks' homes with people gasping for air. She photographed little babies crying. She photographed losers at the diaper derby. She is a contemporary artist in the sense that her pictures still hold their power, but I hope that is true for all the artists that we look at. If it doesn't hold water, then it's not a vessel.
Antes de eu passar para o público, né, uma última pergunta. Irving Penn, no Brasil, quando, onde, como e por quê? E eu estou olhando para a pessoa certa?
Okay. I have a dream, which is that my show on Irving Penn, which is a retrospective, which will include about 240 photographs from the late 1930s until 2008 or 9. We'll come to Brazil, to the Instituto Moreira Salles. My friend Sergio Bergi
Então eu olhei para a pessoa certa.
is welcoming this gesture, and I'm hoping that my first exhibition will come to your city in 2018. The show will open next year in 2017 in New York, and then we'll go to the Grand Palais in Paris in fall of 2017, and then to Berlin, it's a beautiful tour, to Berlin to Martin Gropius-Bau, thank you. And then it will come to Brazil, and I think it will be a beautiful object lesson. It's about how to take simple materials, attention, an understanding of the language of photography and its creative potential, and transforming those things into beautiful objects that I hope when you leave that show, wherever you see it, and I hope you see it here, that you will see the world differently, that it will be a better place, that you will feel compelled to pick up a camera and start again. So I leave it with that.
Abro agora para o público. O microfone está circulando com as nossas monitoras. É só erguer a mão. Erguer a mão. Já viu o João Farcas?
You know everybody.
Yeah.
We are a small group. Ele pediu para a gente fazer pergunta, por isso que eu...
Combinado não pode. Tira o microfone.
Eu gostaria que a gente olhando de fora, parece que ao lado da Diane Arbus, o Mapplethorpe é uma outra figura bastante significativa na maneira como os americanos estão olhando para si mesmos. E os dois pagaram um preço muito alto e tiveram um envolvimento pessoal e físico com a fotografia, não apenas como um objeto, uma ação artística, mas como vida. Os dois se envolveram com os seus subjects, e os dois viveram aquilo que eles estavam fotografando, e são dois retratos, aparentemente, das transformações americanas. Eu queria saber se ele tem uma visão específica sobre essa relação possível entre os dois ou não.
No, for you, not for me. No, it's for you.
Yeah, so Arbus said that the making of the photograph was always more important than the photograph. That the relationship was what kept her going, that the meaning of the picture was connected for her to that experience. And so what we as viewers get is part of that. We get what she saw, but not the experience of it. And she did live in a world where she was experiencing one-on-one her subjects. She made lists. Her diaries and appointment books are filled with phone numbers and lists of names of individuals that she's met on the street or in a bar, and she's going to photograph. She made lists of types of individuals she wanted to photograph. She was very patient, and sometimes she photographed individuals for many years at a time. That comes through quietly and subtly in the pictures. She lived for that experience. And I think Mapplethorpe, you're making a comparison, but I think you're talking about their early death. I don't think Diane wanted to commit suicide, but she did. I don't think she was tired of making pictures. I think she was just beginning. I think that Mapplethorpe died of AIDS. He didn't, that was not his intention. So we are looking in a little bit, in answering your question, with the foreshadowing of their death. But they were totally committed to their picture making. It was the world to them. What they were doing and how they were doing it was equal. The method and the product. I think we want to believe that's true for all of the artists we know. That it is a process as well as a way of producing a work. And these things are indistinguished. I don't think you need to know the details of any artist's life to appreciate their art, but when you do, it can be transformative. There are two really bad biographies of Diane Arbus. Maybe one day I will write one, but I don't believe anything I have read in the other two. There's a lot of great information about Walker Evans. There's one good biography and one bad biography. So we have to trust what we see with our eyes, and what we read about artists is often the personal. And I just warn you that this is a really interesting space to discuss. One of the values of an archive, and for those of you who are picture makers and are thinking about this or have inherited your families, placing them in a public collection allows the art to be sustained by direct inquiry by scholars, and that will be a great beneficial thing. It's better than any biography. Okay.
Gostaria de perguntar. Eu gostaria de saber, já que você mencionou o grande interesse do Met na arte francesa, e já que estamos no Brasil, eu gostaria de saber se vocês têm alguma coisa do Hercule de Florence e como é contada essa passagem da história, já que nós temos exemplares fotográficos, inclusive que ele chama de fotografia em 1833, antes da invenção oficial, né, da fotografia, de 1839, como que essa passagem é contada e historicizada no Met? Né? Só lembrando também a polêmica que agora surgiu em função das Olimpíadas, a questão do Santos Dumont, então aproveitando essas pautas comuns, como que essa história é contada lá?
Cada um conta do seu quintal, né?
Sim, mas eu gostaria de saber a versão via Met, já que também interessa a francesa, né? Obrigada.
Yeah. It was like 3 questions.
Yeah, 3 questions.
Just can you interpret? what you...
Yeah.
It's right, yeah.
If you know Artist Florence,
Yeah.
and what the look of the Metropolitan for these works of Artist Florence.
Okay, I think I understand. So the museum's collection is filled with holes, and I know the work. It is not represented, and but the question really is, how do we resolve that, and how encyclopedic should a museum or any collection be? No?
How do you see the history of the invention of photography?
In Brazil.
The introduction.
And because this is done before the official invention of the photography.
Right.
How the story is told.
Okay, so this is like, for me, the research I need to do. So the question is this early invention of photography and whether it predates the European inauguration of it. Yes, so this space between science and art and picture making and printmaking is a fascinating space. My colleague, Stephen Pinson, has written this biography or history of Daguerre. And when I was preparing to come to Brazil, I spoke to him about this very subject. And he told me that he is hoping to help me understand, but that it was impossible for me to learn everything I needed to know about this research that is obviously undergoing and has validity here in Brazil. So maybe next time I come in a year,
We are going to study.
you will send me, or your colleagues, or my friends here, Simonetta and Sergio, will send me what I need to read so that I can answer your question better next time.
Okay.
That's a bad answer, but that's the best I got.
Thank you. Temos uma última pergunta agora aqui para passarmos para o segundo painel.
I want to ask if you're interested in the new ways of printing, or do you consider that it will be just like
Just
digital, like
digital.
not impression anymore?
Desculpa.
See, okay, let me try that. Seeing is a creative act. And photography, whatever we call it, is a way of using the way we see the world differently. Printmaking is just the means for us to see what others have seen or created. And so, I am interested. I don't care personally whether someone makes an inkjet print or a pigment print or a silver dye bleach print or a platinum or a daguerreotype. If you're a picture maker, you have to convince me. Are you an artist?
Yes.
Aha. Okay, your job, sorry, is to convince me of you have used the right medium to express what you want. And I will follow you down that road, whether it's you drawing and based on a photograph, or it's printed on glass, or it's using inkjet, or it's some other form of expression. But if you cannot convince me that you have chosen the right medium, and you can use, that's the great thing about photography. Every way of making an image from the history of photography is at your disposal. You can make a daguerreotype, you can make an ambrotype, a tintype, you can make an autochrome, you can make an image using collotype or lithography or photolithography, you can make a gravure. Everything is at your disposal. The history is so small, but you have a problem. I don't mean you, but we have a problem as picture makers, which is that you have a lot of choices now. In the 1950s, it was you were making a gelatin silver print, or you were making a platinum print, let's say. That was already archaic. So I never tell an artist what medium to work in. They have to tell me why. Okay.
Very good. Thank you so much for your speech, for everything. It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
A Simonetta vai permanecer aqui conosco e agora vamos continuar a nossa discussão. Eu gostaria de chamar a diretora do The Photographers Gallery, Brett Rogers, juntar-se ao painel. E o fotógrafo e colecionador de fotografia contemporânea, Joaquim Paiva, por gentileza. Sim.
Bom, boa tarde, Breto. Obrigada por isso. Hello. Obrigada por estar aqui. Agora nós vamos mudar um pouco do assunto, não mais um museu, mas uma galeria, que trabalha com fotografia. E obrigada também ao Joaquim Paiva, por estar aqui. Joaquim Paiva, que é colecionador de fotografia, fotógrafo, então ele tem também a visão dos dois lados do balcão, de quem fotografa. E o Joaquim Paiva talvez tenha sido um dos primeiros colecionadores privados, do Brasil, assim, mais na modernidade e contemporaneidade. Além de estar sempre envolvido com a cultura fotográfica, trouxe a Susan Sontag para o Brasil, traduzindo livros sobre fotografia, em 78, foi, Joaquim?
Não,
89.
Não, desculpe.
82. Tá vendo? Não vamos brincar com isso. Então, eu passo agora a primeira palavra para a Brett. Acho que ela gostaria de ficar aqui, porque ela vai fazer uma apresentação. It's okay? You're going to stay here?
Or just stand here.
Yeah?
Just like
Okay.
my predecessor. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's wonderful to see so many people here. I've also been told from the translator that because I'm Australian, I think, I speak too fast. So I'm also going to get some handshakes, I'm sure, from the back there, telling me to slow down. So please excuse me if I have to do that occasionally. I want to thank, really, Arte Brasileira and SP-Arte Foto for inviting me here, but also Luciana Brito, because we worked together in 2012 on a very important show of Geraldo de Barros that was launched with the new gallery in 2012. And I think through the conversations that Luciana and I had at that time, she was well aware of my passion for Brazil. That passion springs from the 1980s, when I worked at the British Council as a senior exhibitions manager, and I was responsible for selecting, curating, and installing the British artists at the Sao Paulo Biennale during the 80s and the 90s. So I visited here a lot during those years, and it's such a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to come back here now, so many years later. I haven't been for many years, and to see all that opportunity, all that potential that I saw within photography being nurtured in those days, coming to fruition. And I just want to congratulate the organisers, Fernanda and her team, for the wonderful job they're doing with this photography fair, because I think it's creating what was missing in those days, which is a social and professional hub for all those people who are passionate about photography. And it's interesting because when we talk now about the Photographers Gallery, that is the position that I see that we have within the ecology of the London Art Museum's dedicated photography and wider within the UK as well. Can I just start by a bit of clarification about the word gallery? I think to most of you, a gallery means a commercial gallery. Within the British context, it does not mean a commercial gallery. You know the Whitechapel Gallery, the Serpentine Gallery, the Hayward Gallery. They are, like the Photographers Gallery, entirely public spaces, partially funded by the Arts Council, and we are not commercial enterprises. And yet what I tell you about our gallery will surprise you, because we do have a small commercial implant within our building. But we are run, and all the programs that I'm talking to you about today are part of our public program that that are supported by institutions and foundations. And we have to, of course, raise our own money for additional things. But we get a small grant, about 25% from the Arts Council. So just to clarify that, because the word gallery does confuse people. When I became the director in 2006, there was some consideration about whether we should change the name of the gallery to reflect the different ways that photography is understood in the 21st century. And I can tell you, we wasted a lot of time talking to our constituency, talking to our staff and our board about what that new name could be. because something that embraces the entire image culture that we really did want to reflect was going to be a bit of a dog's dinner, as we say, and it wouldn't really have the legacy that people associate with the Photographer's Gallery and its association with introducing new forms of photography to the UK since it was founded in 1971. So we made the bold decision to stick with the title, with the name. Anyway, let me just run through quite quickly. Just for those of you, I think many of you do know the gallery and would have visited it in its previous location at Leicester Square, where it was for 37 years, before I made the bold decision in 2005 that it was time to stop having two gallery spaces that you had to walk in and walk out of to go to the bookshop, and which made growth impossible within the gallery for the future, and to sell those places and to buy a new space just on the other side of Soho, where we could really develop the full potential of the institution and the vision that I had for the organisation. So as you can see, we bought a rundown warehouse here, which is only 50 yards off the most important shopping street in the UK, Oxford Street, and you can see it down a little narrow lane. And we transformed it, having raised a lot of money and using award-winning architects, into the beautiful building that is there on the right. That was all achieved in 2010 and to 2012, over a period of 2 years. The map is just to reinforce that we are only 30 seconds really from Oxford Circus Tube, so very, very well located right in the heart of London. And that the previous gallery that some of you might have known was down here at Leicester Square, about 7 minutes walk away. So what is important for me is that I didn't really radically change the location. To me, Soho in London, which is like Soho in New York, always has been associated with edgy, provocative, interesting artwork and television and graphics now. It's the area where movie graphics are produced. So image making is critical to what Soho industry is, and that's why we've always felt that the position of the Photographer's Gallery was right in Soho. We are the only public gallery there, though. And then, of course, we added some floors, and so we now have got 7 floors, and I'll do a very quick survey about how we use those spaces. Of course, we enter through the cafe and the digital wall, which I'll talk about in a minute, or on the ground floor. And then on the basement, there is the bookshop and the print sales that are both very important to us, not only from raising revenue, but really for provoking debate and encouragement to talk about the importance of the photo book and about collecting. Because our print sales has been an important part of what we do since we were founded in 1971. It was a way, of course, of raising money, but most important to us, and remains to me, is it's a way of introducing new talent and supporting artists at a critical time of their career to get a foot into the commercial gallery world. Most of the artists who come through our print sales only stay a few years, and then the bigger galleries pick them up and take them to new heights. And that's what we see as part of our role, as nurturing young talent, and also nurturing the confidence of a new generation of collectors to take the plunge and start collecting. So a lot of the references that I'll be making today about collecting photography come from our discussions that we have with our younger group of collectors about why would you collect photography, and they're usually convinced by the time I've gone through the reasons. So just a quick survey now. When we were discussing what we should be doing in the new building, many people said, why do you need a photography gallery at all in the 21st century when most people learn about photography and get all their knowledge now from the internet? And of course, you know, I'm very, very invested in the photographic object and the materiality of photography. So of course I rejected that claim altogether. But it did make us all think, what is it, you know, that's changed within the photography scene that makes the photography physical space important? And so we just did a quick survey, you know, a quick note-taking, which we revise occasionally, about the changes that have been happening since the time I arrived at the gallery, sort of in 2005-06, to the situation today. And we'll go through some of these in the next few slides, so I won't spend time reading those out. One of the important things that we recognized had changed was that the way that the public, the majority of people, understand, appreciate, see photography today is on the screen. The network culture and computational photography are completely new ways of our understanding the medium. And we had to shift in what we were doing to recognize that change. So not only did we appoint a curator of digital programs, but we have in our entrance a digital wall. I was going to call it the wall for all because it encourages public participation and people to upload their images onto it. But it actually has turned out to be more of a curated space where we invite artists to make works especially for the wall. So these are works that will never be hung in galleries, that will never be hung in frames. They exist only as digital works. This was the first project where we invited established photographers who'd never made an animated GIF in their life to do so for our opening show. And they all said that, it was fascinating to be helped to make that big plunge into the animated GIF world, and that for some it had changed the way they looked at the digital. Other highlights of the digital program have been John Raffman, who's a very well-known Canadian artist working in that field, Susan Sloan, who's using facial recognition software to create new work, and we also do popular things to do with the web, of course. After pornography, I suppose you all know that the most popular subject on the web are cats. There are more cat websites, dedicated websites, with amazing photographs on them than any other subject except pornography. So just the image on the right, for example, there is a whole website called Cat Scan, which is dedicated to cats walking across photocopiers. And it's very beautiful. Morris Lewis paintings are nearly as lovely. Of course, some of the, you all know the cats wear the cameras around their necks that have made a fortune for their owners. And so we explored that whole phenomenon, not just on the wall, but in a series of talks and, of course, debates and writings online. To review some of the exhibitions we've been having and how we put them together. It's very important that we do combine historical, well-researched shows such as Burden of Proof that we did with Le Bal in Paris, which explored forensic photography and how photography is used in courts of law to adjudicate on human rights issues, with contemporary photographers such as Noemi Goodall, who's only just 30, was trained in Britain, and whose work deals with man-made landscapes and the culture landscape divide. Shirley Baker on the bottom left is a wonderful documentary photographer who I refer to as our Helen Levitt. I don't know if Jeff would agree with that, but we like to discover and put back on the map people who have been overlooked, especially, we have a very strong commitment, as you'll notice, to women photographers. So Shirley Baker was a doctor's wife in Manchester in the 1960s who applied to get a press photography license but couldn't, so she just independently photographed the change in Manchester during the 60s, and now she's being heralded as a major photographer for that period. And of course we're very committed to the photo book. Every 18 months we have an exhibition about the photo book. This is the famous one that was curated by Martin Parr. Prior to that we had one on Japanese photo book, and our next exhibition will be with some partners in Europe on the children's photo book. Just this year, we started the year with a series of 3 shows that are all related, really, in some way, about photography, memory, and the archive. Saul Leiter from the 50s, 60s, reinventing colour photography and street photography at that time was proved to be a great success. And everybody who came to see Saul Leiter then saw the Rosangela Reno, the wonderful piece that she did from Montevideo, using the archives there of the press archive. And most of the visitors' comments were they came to see the Saul Leiter, but wow, they were more impressed with the Rosangela Reno, and we were so thrilled about that, because that's exactly what we try to do when they come for a well-known name and then they see somebody that they don't know. And finally, it was the anniversary of the 1916 Easter Uprising, a very important event in British social history, and we had that exhibition as well that drew an Irish audience. Just to go back to, now we're getting onto the bit about collecting photographs and what we tell people and what we describe, and the opportunities really for getting into photography collection when you're new to it. I know that this has been superseded, the Gursky price, by another Gursky. Gursky's always making record prices at auction, and he only last year reached a higher figure than the 4 million that was here with his Rhineland image. And Edward Steichen, of course, sold for nearly 3 million in 1904. This is just to put in context, you know, the really rather inflated prices now for some of these objects. But to go back to what a small institution like us and the role we can play and how we can help collectors, both these artists, Idris Khan, who's now shown with Victoria Miro, was one of our Pincers artists in the 1990s, and you could buy his work then. The one on the left for sort of £500, and now it's, you know, 60,000 upwards. And Renika Dextra also was an artist who showed with our Pincers at that time this beautiful series from the Bullfighters series. And that also was, you know, affordable, because what we're trying to do is to encourage people to understand that photography, if you get it at the right time, is incredibly affordable and accessible. And of course, that image now goes for way over £100,000. People always say to me when they're collecting, you know, should we collect analog or digital? And, you know, what is the right way to go? And I just remind them of the huge interest at the moment in reviving these 19th century techniques, not only by people who are so well known as Sally Mann, who've revived the wet collodion process, but a whole generation of younger British artists who are using tintypes, wet collodion, to explore the medium. So certainly, going back to the question that was asked earlier, I don't ever consider the technique to be the important thing, and do draw collectors' attention to the magic and the potency of these images. And of course, I'm rather delighted that Jeff mentioned Adams so much, because his photograms are outstanding. These are ones from the late 90s, early 2000s, where he just puts the object on the enlarger. And he has also encouraged a huge amount of young artists at the moment to investigate the photogram technique. And finally, Richard Leroy is having his moment in London and in America, where he's got a show opening at the Getty. And these are camera obscura portraits taken in his studio in East London, and they are really quite extraordinary. I'm also interested in the trend at the moment that we have very evidence in our print sales of people repurposing the found photograph, either through embroidery with Maurizio Enzeri on the left, or through collage of Julie Coburn on the right. I think the father figure of all this is an artist who really emerged in Britain in the 70s and the 80s, called John Steziker, here on the left, a major figure who they all look to. And then two very young artists, the two on the right, Clarice Darsimol and Alma Haza, are sort of under 35, and they are using these using found photographs to reinvent a new language. Alma makes three-dimensional portraits. Those the image on the face is a three-dimensional structure coming out of a portrait of that young girl, and she's just had to show with us in Princess. Also new forms of documentary, reinventing the document. These are two of the artists that we have recently discovered in print sales who are proving very popular, and where we think that the work is quite outstanding and affordable for collectors. Again, this is Eugenia Abrugeva from Siberia, whose project on the Weatherman is an amazing project of a man who spends his life in the far north of Siberia making meteorological recordings for the Russian government. And the artist at the bottom, Tamas Desko, is based in Budapest, and his work really charts the transformation of Transylvania and Romania during the last decade. Of course, I think we all will refer to the explosion of the photo book over the last decade. We've all been very, very aware of its growth and popularity and how much it's become an important platform for young artists to express themselves. I often tell artists, please don't worry, just make the series and then you can decide whether you want to print it as a set of prints and present it in a gallery or whether it might work much better as a book. And they sometimes feel that a book is a secondary object, secondary in its importance and not as important as a set of prints on a gallery wall. But as we all know from the importance of books that we've seen recently, such as Christina de Model's amazing Afronauts that she made 4 years ago, and others, of course, Sophia Borges is somebody here who I'm interested in, Rosangela Reno. You have a very rich tradition here of artists who use the photo book in an incredibly creative and exciting way. I just feel as though that people should be thinking about collecting photo books on their own without even worrying about printed, framed objects. Lorenzo Vittori is another Italian artist who made this extraordinary book, now out of print, when he arrived in London, and his studio was on one of the busy market roads in East London. So he fell out of his studio every day, and this is what he found, and he just picked up objects from the market and took them back into his studio and photographed them and made collages out of them, and that's been an extraordinary success. So where do you find information about these photo books? Well, I always recommend the blogs, because all these blogs are always talking about photo books and the best new ones. There are so many well-informed people talking about and giving recommendations on photo books that it's very important that you keep up to date with that information. Oh, what now? Okay, and generally, these are my favorite websites that I read nearly every week just to keep up to date with new thinking around photography, new thinking about who's interesting and who's not. I'm sure that in Brazil you have just as many equivalent websites, but it's always good to share them amongst each other because, they do change, and some of them aren't good for long, so they always have a peripatetic life. But I do want to also comment on the importance of the magazine. It's made a revival in the last few years, and as well as Aperture and Foam being Aperture's been redesigned and relaunched. We all love Zoom, the magazine from your institution, Sergio, and look forward to it coming out twice a year. But there's also all these new bespoke magazines here on the bottom that are coming out just in response to the huge appetite to see different forms of photography in different layouts and with different editorial viewpoints. So I'm finding it very exciting at the moment to see how many new photographic magazines are reaching different audiences. And I think that artists do love to see their work represented in magazines rather than blogs. Of course, coming to the end of my talk, the photography fairs and festivals are so important in helping to educate the eye and educate people. And over the last decade, we've seen the growth of them. Of course, Photo is the longest standing, and as well as is iPad. But the new ones, like Unseen in Amsterdam, is a fabulous new festival. It's devoted to new and unseen and young work. So it has a different sort of energy. And of course, in London, we are in the second year now of our new Foto London. So we are excited by that we have our own new photography fair. But festivals are different to fairs. Fairs, of course, are commercial. Festivals usually are curated by a single individual and have a very robust critical discourse around them. And so these are the ones that I try to go to every year, and they're all very different, or I don't go to, some of my team members do, because they all offer something different, and you can really find something of benefit in all of them. When people say, how do I start a collection and what should I do? Unless they do want to have a geographic focus, I always suggest that they think about something that is really that they're passionate about. And here, just these are examples from collectors that we have already in our for our print sales. There's one collector who only collects things to do with glass and mirrors. And you'd think that was very limiting, but I can't tell you what an exciting collection he has, the one on the bottom. And on the top, it's a collector who only collects images where people have their eyes closed. So some of the subjects you can choose are very obscure, and but they have to be exactly what you feel is important to you. Of course, fashion photography has become very collectible in the last few years, and I'm very pleased about that, because I consider all the people on this page, from Vivian Sasson to Nick Knight, Klein, Steichen, and the two images on the left are from a show that we currently have on about black dandies in the gallery, all to be eminently collectible, and the two on the left are eminently affordable because they're quite young artists. Still Life, of course, the Lorenzo Vittori, Laura Latinsky, and Sarah Jones here. And of course, there's always a trend with what's the latest geographical area to follow. And we all remember when China, thanks to Christopher Phillips, and all the shows at ICP and at the V&A Museum, forced our attention on China. But I really don't feel that is where the energy currently is. So this was the period that we all remember very fondly, when all these artists came to prominence and really excited the collecting market. And then we had South Africa, and that still continues to engage many people and is still very strong. And then we had the Middle East, thanks to Art Dubai and to the photography interest there. And that's also an interesting new development, which I'm following quite closely, and is developing some new talent. And I think that perhaps one of my own prediction is that the new area to watch is Korea, because there's some very interesting younger artists and a very, very vibrant scene happening there at the moment. So if people ask me about places to watch, I'll usually recommend Korea. So I don't know how that will affect things. So that's all I have to say. I've been told that that's enough time, so thank you.
No, it's okay. Foto. Okay. I'm going to stay here. Yeah. Ju, ele apresenta primeiro ou eu entrevisto e depois ele apresenta? Ele apresenta. Convido então agora o Joaquim Paiva para sentar e fazer a apresentação dele, depois eu converso com os dois. Você quer ficar aqui?
Antes de mais nada, boa tarde. Obrigado à SP-Arte por me convidar para esse evento. Me sinto muito prestigiado por isso. E gostaria de dizer que eu conversei com a Simonetta e decidimos que seria importante mostrar os dois lados, ou vários lados, de uma mesma pessoa envolvida com a fotografia. Ou seja, o fotógrafo, eu comecei como fotógrafo em 1970 e foi só em 78 que eu comecei a coleção com 2 ou 3 fotos e sistematicamente no ano de 2001. E então são mais de 40 anos lidando com a imagem, né? Não apenas como criador, como artista, como fotógrafo, mas também como colecionador. As duas coisas existem numa mesma pessoa. Então, eu combinei com ela e resolvemos passar essas imagens. Eu fui para Brasília em 1970. Eu trabalhei a minha vida inteira como diplomata. Eu fui para Brasília exatamente... Morava no Rio de Janeiro, eu sou carioca. Eu fui para lá para exercer as minhas funções. Bom, e aí, como vocês viram naquelas primeiras fotos, a cidade era uma maquete arquitetônica. As árvores não haviam crescido, não havia muita gente, não havia muito automóvel. As avenidas eram muito largas, a gente olhava assim de um lado para o outro. Eu não tinha coragem de atravessar, é uma coisa enorme. E então, ao mesmo tempo em que eu fui viver em uma maquete arquitetônica, uma coisa caída assim da estratosfera, no meio do Planalto Central brasileiro, eu me interessei muito em buscar algo mais humano, mais colorido, e aí descobri a periferia da cidade, com essas casas que existiam, que foram dos moradores pioneiros da cidade e dos que vieram construir a cidade, né? E essas casas de madeira todas, elas deveriam ser postas abaixo. E realmente foram, apesar de terem ficado muito tempo. A ideia seria 1 ano, 2, depois da construção da cidade, colocar abaixo tudo isso. Mas elas perduraram muito tempo, até o final dos anos 70. E eu pude, então, ainda tirar as fotos. Eu prefiro dizer tirar fotografia, no meu caso. Eu nunca ganhei dinheiro com fotografia, só fiz gastar dinheiro. Então, e ninguém nunca me pediu nem para colecionar, nem para fotografar. Então, eu me sinto com muita liberdade de fazer a minha maneira. E eu, quando fiz essas fotos assim, inclinadas, tortas, eu achei que maluquice, não sei o que e tal, mas enfim. É bom poder usar essa liberdade. Então, a minha experiência com a fotografia foi direta, assim, utilizando a câmera como um instrumento de expressão, de documentação, uma maneira de ver a realidade. Eu sempre tive interesse pelas artes visuais. Uma das 5 maiores emoções estéticas da minha vida foi a minha primeira Bienal de São Paulo, em 1965. Eu tinha 19 anos, então vocês sabem quantos anos eu tenho agora, se fizerem a conta. Mas eu quero dizer que foi absolutamente impactante ver a minha primeira Bienal de São Paulo. E acho que uma das razões que explicam esse boom, esse conhecimento, o debruçar-se sobre a arte brasileira no nível acadêmico, nas universidades, deve muito às Bienais de São Paulo. Porque nós tivemos a oportunidade, num país periférico, como o Brasil, ter, desde 1952, com a primeira Bienal de São Paulo, e no meu caso, eu conheci em 1965, nós sempre tivemos aqui a oportunidade de ver a arte feita no mundo. E eu, então, nos fins de semana, aí, na cidade onde eu trabalhava, para me descontrair um pouco do peso das minhas responsabilidades, eu ia para esses lugares assim, onde um diplomata não iria nunca, não seria bem-vindo, eu não teria ibope nenhum frequentando esses lugares, eu devia estar em outros lugares. Mas aí eu estava vendo a gente do povo brincar, se divertir. Eu gosto desse corte fotográfico, em que metade do corpo está cortado. E tem uma coisa, as pessoas riem. As pessoas riem. Uma vez o editor de uma revista alemã me entrevistou em Houston, no ano de 2000. E ele publicou uma matéria grande, 6 páginas, sobre a minha coleção. E nós, brasileiros, nós somos assim, mais descontraídos, a gente ri e tal. Aí ele falou assim para mim, puxa, mas que coisa, como é interessante ver a maneira como você reage, fala e tal. Na Alemanha não podemos fazer isso. Na Alemanha não podemos rir. Então, esse tema do riso, inclusive, é uma coisa muito interessante. Em Nome da Rosa, do Humberto Eco, tem um capítulo em que fala do riso, do rir. Então, eu acho que muitas vezes os europeus e os americanos nos estranham porque nós talvez fiquemos muito à vontade demais e tenhamos o gosto do riso de uma maneira muito mais descontraída do que nas culturas nórdicas. E isso é uma coisa que os anglo-saxões estranham muito. Isso não vou dizer uma seita, mas um grupo religioso E é uma mistura, é um liquidificador de qualquer coisa que você possa imaginar, né? Influências incas, astecas, kardecistas e espiritistas e católicas e tudo. Eu nunca entendi muito bem. Eu só entendi uma coisa muito claramente, que esse lugar era um lugar onde as pessoas humildes iam para procurar um conforto espiritual. Digamos que nós possamos pagar um psicanalista ou um psicólogo, e essas pessoas não podiam. Então, quando eu me dei conta do que significava esse lugar, eu fiquei feliz. Isso aí é um carnaval comprometido politicamente. Era um grupo de jornalistas que fazia o pacotão, em referência aos pacotes do regime, na época do Sarney. Vinha um pacote econômico atrás do outro, né? Isso aí foi um derramamento de material radioativo em Goiânia, onde morreram várias pessoas, e várias ficaram muito mal, de césio. Então, é um tema esse da alegria, sabe? Teve gente que me disse assim, na Europa, o seu livro é alegre. Mas ser alegre em arte contemporânea e ser alegre em fotografia é uma questão muito complicada. Alegria pode não ser o tema da arte, alegria pode ser... Talvez não seja o espaço. É uma discussão na fotografia, lidar com o positivo. Mulheres, vamos à luta. Isso no meados da década de 80. Para quem nasceu depois, mas as mulheres já lutavam pela sua liberdade? Isso é uma feira de artesanato, e as pessoas posavam com a maior facilidade. Outra coisa interessantíssima nesse trabalho, com relação ao que se faz hoje em dia. Não havia o problema de você fotografar o rosto das pessoas. Hoje é absolutamente impossível. Quer dizer, você já tem que chegar com papel pedindo autorização. Então, para mim, cortou barato toda a fotografia. Olha, as pessoas todas sorridentes. Que lugar feliz é o Brasil, né? É a leitura primeira. Isso é uma árvore maravilhosa que tem uma época do ano na cidade em que ela cai e faz esse mar de... É o ipê, é o famoso, que aliás é a árvore, como é que se diz? Símbolo do Brasil, né? Aí a terra vermelha da cidade. A primeira vez que eu fui lá, no dia 3 de junho, 3 de fevereiro de 1970, me impressionou muito vendo do avião aquela terra vermelha. E o contraste com o verde da grama e das árvores era fantástico. Então me impressionou muito, por isso que eu incluí as fotos da terra na cidade. Que, aliás, eu acho que foi uma aventura incrível da parte do Brasil, sabe? Um país que sempre viveu à beira-mar e sempre houve a ideia de se transferir a capital para o interior, que já veio desde as lutas entre as duas principais potências europeias, né? Da Península Ibérica, Portugal e Espanha. E aí, na época, a gente usava filme, né, analógico, e muitas vezes a gente usava o filme rebobinado, porque o filme certinho que vinha na caixa era muito caro, e os fotógrafos eram todos pobres, né? Então... Não, mas eu embarquei no que as pessoas faziam. E então, quando você... a última chapa, ela sempre ficava meio velada, ela ficava amarelada, ela pegava uma parte com imagem, outra não. E eu sempre gostei dessas pontas de filme. Eu tenho um monte de pontas de filme, adoro as pontas de filme. E aí são fotos do céu fantástico. Em Brasília se diz que o céu é o mar da cidade. É um céu absolutamente incrível. Aliás, tem uma coisa, eu fico falando dessa cidade, eu acho que todo mundo assim tem vontade, talvez, de cair em pau em cima de mim, porque tudo que a gente vê da cidade, infelizmente, né, é a realidade política, né, com todos os seus problemas hoje em dia. Mas eu vivi essa cidade, eu vivi uma cidade como um habitante, né? Então, eu não sei, é muito difícil dizer isso, mas eu quando vejo aqueles palácios na televisão, né, os repórteres mostrando, isso é a rodoviária. Eu acho aqueles palácios fantásticos, eles resistiram ao tempo. Para mim, eles são cada vez mais belos. Agora, eu dizer que acho a cidade bela, eu sei, vão cair em cima de ovos podres e tomates em cima de mim. Porque vão exigir de mim, não, você tem de se posicionar politicamente com aquela cidade de corruptos. Está bem, é uma verdade, mas existem outras verdades também. Então, é interessante ver como é que aquilo que o fotógrafo, o artista fez, o influenciou ao longo da vida nas suas escolhas também para a coleção, e como a própria coleção foi uma experiência estética importante para mim também. O rapazinho que veio da periferia fazer uma fotografia num domingo. Um snapshot, uma foto de lembrança. Não é legal? Eu gosto tanto dessa série. As duas com os olhos fechados. O garoto ali cansado da corrida de bicicleta. Ali eu cheguei muito perto, a minha sombra, o casal se beijando, eu ali atrás. Olha, se eles olhassem para mim, estava perdido. Hoje seria um problemaço. Na época, ainda um pouco menos. E aí são as fotos finais. Olha como a cidade era vazia. Hoje você olha para lá, é tudo cheio, tudo construído. Mas ainda permanece uma das três dimensões idealizadas pelo Lúcio Costa, que é a dimensão do horizonte, da vista se perder. Bom, então, isso é uma parte. E agora, então, eu vou passar a alguma coisa da coleção. Um minutinho, eu tenho que pegar aqui uma coisa. Vamos lá. Olha, em 70, então, eu comprei as primeiras fotos, foram muito poucas, 2 de Diane Arbus e fotos do Miguel Rio Branco. Essa é a capa de um primeiro livretto de 2, esse é um fotógrafo alemão, ele se chama Jörg Ornung, e é uma instalação virtual. Isso aí não é verdade, quer dizer, ele pôs dentro, virtualmente, dessas estruturas velhas, em decomposição, essa parece uma grande cobra, digamos. Né? Então, é uma instalação virtual. Bom, podemos passar... Ah, sou eu que vou... Ah, está aqui. Então, peraí. Deixa eu ver, eu vou tentar ficar ali em pé. Ó. Não. Como é que eu mexo aqui? Onde é que eu passo? Aqui? Tá bom. Esses são... Os fotógrafos são uns 120 e poucos do primeiro livretto. Tem uns 120 e poucos também no segundo livretto. Tem um total de 120 fotografias em cada livretto. E é uma pequena parte do que eu já deixei no Museu de Arte Moderna do Rio de Janeiro, que é um total de 1.693 fotografias de 315 fotógrafos, dos quais 60% brasileiros e 40% estrangeiros. Como é que eu faço que não está indo? Vem cá.
João, passa para ele.
Está aqui. Então, eu quis fazer, por exemplo, esse é o Christopher Rauschenberg, que é filho do Robert Rauschenberg, e é uma comparação entre Paris de Agé e uma reprodução atual da cidade. Mais caro, Elza Lima. Essa é uma uruguaia, uma cama amarrotada. Alguém dormiu, alguém fez qualquer coisa que se faz em uma cama. E, para mim, foi muito importante eu colocar os fotógrafos brasileiros juntos com os estrangeiros, porque assim está composta a coleção. E, durante muito tempo, nunca se fez, não havia muito um hábito no Brasil de se colocar juntos. Havia um complexo de inferioridade que eu acho que definitivamente nós temos que superar, porque realmente é uma bobagem enorme a gente se achar com esse complexo de vira-lata, como a imprensa disse agora até durante as Olimpíadas. Os artistas brasileiros sempre dialogaram com o exterior, mesmo antes da internet, muito antes. E é um espectro da coleção, as minhas escolhas são muito variadas. O que me interessa, em primeiro lugar, é o envolvimento do fotógrafo com o que ele faz. É a paixão dele pela fotografia. Então, por exemplo, ali é o trabalho do Marcelo Brodsky, da Argentina. Ele perdeu um irmão durante a ditadura, morreram mais de 30 mil pessoas na Argentina, nós não tivemos essa tragédia nesse nível. Então, esse é o tema do Marcelo Brodsky, né? Como outros não têm um tema político, né? Então, ali são chineses lendo o famoso livrinho do Mao Tse Tung. Essa é uma da Diane Arbus. Imagina isso na sociedade americana, de uma ousadia, um casamento, um namoro interracial, sobretudo no final da década de 60, aliás, metade da década de 60. Isso é uma coisa completamente estapafúrdia num país como os Estados Unidos. Ali é a Vivian Maier. Eu estava morando nos Estados Unidos, em São Francisco, um dia lendo o New York Times, de domingo, eu vi uma reportagem sobre a Vivian Maier. Era uma babá. Puxa, que fantástico, uma babá que fotografava e tal. E ela deixou tudo isso num armazém. Não pôde tirar antes de morrer, porque não tinha dinheiro para recuperar o que ela havia deixado em storage. E aí alguém comprou num leilão. E aí começou-se a comercializar. Eu adquiri essas fotos, foram duas que eu adquiri no Paris Foto, em Los Angeles, em 2012. Uma galeria de Nova York. Aí, quando eu vi o preço, gente, puxa, legal, sim, vou comprar duas, quero. Imagina, essa mulher é fantástica, uma babá que fazia fotografias. Incrível, incrível, incrível. Aqui o Rogério Reis com o Carnaval. Esse, o Silvio Leitão da Cunha, ninguém conhece, ele morou décadas em Paris, casado com uma francesa. Tem um trabalho com processos antigos de goma bicromatada, fantástico. E tudo isso já está no Museu de Arte Moderna. Ali o Valdir Cruz. Ali o Zé Medeiros, que trabalhou na revista Cruzeiro, e ele me contou numa entrevista, eu fiz entrevistas com 50 fotógrafos brasileiros nos anos 80, e eu tenho os áudios, olha que coisa incrível, você vai ouvir a voz do Zé Medeiros em 1984, Então, eu tenho tudo isso. E essa é uma foto retangular, mas ele tem muitas fotos quadradas, porque no jornal, na época, o interessante, o importante, era você fazer a fotografia quadrada, com a Hasselblad. Ele, então, fazia, mas a Hasselblad é mais pesada, então ele usava uma câmera de 35 minutos e botava ele cortava e apresentava quadrado. Luiz Braga, imagina, Luiz Braga, que hoje só fotografa a cores, eram fotografias preto e branco que eu ainda tenho dele. Será que eu ficando aqui eu atrapalho? Melhor ficar aqui? Não? Ah, olha, do Eduardo Muilart, ele me deu essa foto, aqui de São Paulo. Alejandro Cartagena, mexicano, e é uma crítica aos conjuntos habitacionais, né? Que são lindos, maravilhosos, quando estão prontos, né? E depois vão se deteriorando. Aqui, eu gosto muito desse trabalho do Brad Temkin, de Chicago. Ele fotografa os jardins, né? Os jardins dentro da cidade. Ali está o Jorge Hornung. Aqui é um outro americano, Frederick Marsh. Uma coisa muito delicada com aquela parede. Tem a coisa uma certa melancolia, né? Um lugar abandonado. Flor Gardunho, com esse trabalho de valorização do homem latino-americano, primitivo. Aqui é o inglês, Richard Drury. Olha, uma rosa preta. Aqui o Eduardo Castanho, que hoje mora em Nova York. Lindas essas flores. Ali um americano, o Thomas Bromet. A foto é assim mesmo, é voltada para baixo. Aqui é o Cláudio Perna, ninguém conhecia na época que eu morei em Caracas, Venezuela. Nós ficamos amigos, ele era um italiano que havia imigrado para Caracas, e ele fez essa foto para mim, ele escreveu ali embaixo, aqui na impressão não saiu, mas embaixo ele falou assim, para o meu amigo Joaquim, do Cláudio Perna, e há umas 2 ou 3 bienais de São Paulo atrás, eu fiquei super surpreso, no bom sentido, de que havia uma exposição dele, do Cláudio Perna. Ou seja, ainda bem que o trabalho dele foi recuperado. Ele teve uma coisa interessante, que foi valorizar na Venezuela, já em meados dos anos 70, a fotografia anônima. A fotografia que você compra né? O Antravnik. Esse é o Kenjiota. Esse é um russo. Ótimo trabalho. Aliás, eu tenho vários russos. Eu tenho uns 10 ou 12 russos. Acho a fotografia russa o máximo. Esse é americano, é uma vista de São Francisco, Leon Nash. Ele mora lá na Bay Area. Aqui o Thomas Kellner, americano, que faz esse tipo de prova de contato, né? Aí a Casa Branca, em Washington, e eu tenho um bem grande. 5 minutes, tá bom. Mas eu acho que vai dar para a gente passar. Eu tenho uma do Conjunto Nacional, que é o primeiro shopping que surgiu em Brasília, feito por ele. Muito interessante. Aqui é o Tema Amados, o espanhol, Rochelle Coste, no início da carreira. Postaizinhos com essa decalcomania, né?
Primeira foto que eu vendi.
Você está aí. Olha, que ótimo.
Primeiro comprador.
Ai, que legal. Essa está mal impressa. It's badly printed. Mas é o 26 Gasoline Station, o photobook, que eu comprei por uns $10 em 1975 no Canadá. Infelizmente, na época, eu não tive um insight para ver que eu deveria comprar todos os outros livrinhos que ele tinha. Eu não sei se ele tinha muitos mais na época, mas enfim. Aquela, a Sarah Terry, foi uma das primeiras pessoas que fez um livro com fotos de celular. É um livro pequenininho, olha, é um livro assim, dessa altura, mas que se desdobra nesse número muito grande de imagens. Diário de viagem. Marcos Magal está aqui. Eu preciso explicar uma coisa. É complicadíssimo, no meu caso, fazer projeções e palestras sobre a minha coleção, porque como são, hoje em dia, são cerca de, olha, passou um pouco de 3.000, são cerca de 3.100 fotografias, de uns 500 fotógrafos. É impossível, absolutamente desumano, eu numa palestra abranger 500 e tantos fotógrafos. Então eu fico sempre numa situação muito difícil, saia justa, como se diz, né? Que aí de repente tem alguém presente e não tem a foto dele, e aí o que eu faço? Então peço desculpas se houver. Isso aqui é um dos volumes. No outro tem vários outros, não sei se eu vou ter tempo de mostrar, mas é uma situação difícil. Luzia Simões, que mora na Alemanha, você conhece muito bem, né? Aqui é a Greta Sterner. Eu tenho 2 fotos dela. Fantástico. Sabe o que era isso? Final dos anos 40, Buenos Aires, uma revista, e tinha um consultório sentimental. Meu senhor, meu namorado me abandonou, o que hei de fazer? Aí pediram a ela, a Greta Sterner, que ilustrasse isso por imagens, né? Uma uruguaia, lindo esse trabalho dela, super delicado. Tiago de Barros, aí uma foto minha de uma outra série que não é de Brasília, variações em torno de um personagem, sempre sobre a mesma pessoa, que, aliás, com esse trabalho eu quero fazer um livro, porque eu tenho muito, muito material. E já houve um curador aqui de São Paulo que falou, vamos fazer esse negócio juntos. Então, mais um projeto que eu pretendo realizar. Ali o Bill Jordan, que é um americano que morreu, e é uma comparação entre o estilo de vida na Europa, mais introspectivo, digamos, mais culto, e o estilo de vida nos Estados Unidos, descontraído, descomprometido. Aqui o Marcos Lopes, eu tenho algumas das primeiras fotos dele, o Borges. Alex,
ainda bem que estão todos aqui, né?
Ainda bem, até agora. Puxa, essa eu achei o máximo. É uma iraniana que tampou o corpo, e aí ela me contou que no Irã, nas bibliotecas todas, os livros que vêm do Ocidente com fotografias, são todos escritos por cima com trechos do Alcorão. Então foi isso que ela fez. Mas ela é uma iraniana que mora em Paris há muitos anos. Essa é uma australiana, é como se fosse uma questão de dupla personalidade. Ela se fotografa com uma roupa e depois com outra. E ela fez isso com os fotografados dela. Ela fotografou com, enfim, com uma roupa e com outra. Sim, eu já sei como é que foi a história. Ela fotografava a pessoa quando ela chegava na casa da pessoa com a roupa que a pessoa estava. E depois ela dizia, eu gostaria de te fotografar com a roupa que você gostaria de vestir. Esse é um projeto que vários fotógrafos fazem para estimular a fantasia do fotografado. Carlos Fadon Vicente, 1982. Eu tenho essa carta na minha casa, eu tenho os arquivos muito organizados de toda a papelada gerada por décadas de coleção. Ele fala, Joaquim, você com 150 fotografias já tem a maior coleção do Brasil e tal. Isso não é para puxar a brasa para minha sardinha, não é nada disso. Como é que alguém pode dizer que é a maior coleção do Brasil? Alguém que tem 150 fotos. Não é possível. Só se eu tivesse os maiores mestres da fotografia, todas as obras que todos os americanos iam invejar, franceses, entendeu? Mas não era. Para ver que as pessoas não colecionavam mesmo, né? Miguel Rui Branco, eu me lembro do Mário Cravo Neto uma vez, o Miguel é umas coisas muito fortes, muito deprimentes.
Ok, acabou. Gente, foram duas exposições bastante interessantes, meio que complementares. Pelo adiantado da hora, eu vou fazer o encerramento, mas abrir para as perguntas do público, caso já juntei do encerramento, caso haja interesse do público em fazer perguntas, para a gente não se alongar mais. Agradeço de antemão a presença de todos vocês hoje, em nome da Arte Brasileiros, em nome da SP-Arte, e passo então a palavra, agradeço a Breta, agradeço a Joaquim, ao Jeff, e passo a palavra, se vocês, por favor, puderem se sentar aqui, passo a palavra para o público para as perguntas.
Bom, voltando à pergunta. Claro. Voltando à pergunta, qual é a linha que se traça quando uma fotografia começa a ser chamada de arte? Porque algumas fotos, elas são projetadas, né, elas são planejadas para já ser provocativas, já ser arte. E outras fotos são clicadas, né, no momento apenas para ser documental. O que é que tira essa foto do documental para virar arte? Se é uma mudança no lugar que ela foi feita ou se é o nome que o fotógrafo atingiu no momento futuro?
Is that ready to be? Yeah. For both of the three. No.
Both first. Oh, okay. It is often to do with the intention of the artist. I mean, we know that I know really one of the issues when I was discussing whether I should change the name of the photographers gallery is that some artists don't want to exhibit in a photography gallery. They prefer to be shown in a wider visual arts context. But I think we have demonstrated through our program that we embrace all sorts of photography, artists who use photography and straight photographers. I'm not going to go into a definition of what, to me, makes the difference between an artist who uses photography and a straight photography, because to me, it doesn't really in the end matter. What matters is what the creator has to say and how they express it. So I think these definitions are now so interchanged. You know, the artist photographer, it really has become such of a red herring that it is not really such a big issue today for artists or photographers. I think that, you know, and it nearly goes back to the question, is photography an art? Which we have got rid of that question finally. And I'm hoping that the other one about artists, photographers, and photographers, not straight photographers, not seeing themselves alongside each other is also a redundant one in the 21st century.
Jeff, you want to answer? Would you like to answer?
I want to hear the professor's answer.
Oh, you are a professor.
Yeah, you.
No, you. I'm a Brazilian professor. It's different.
So time helps. Those things that begin as documents, given a little bit of time, become art pretty quickly. And what I mean by that is that, you know, the evidentiary nature of many photographs all of a sudden becomes a picture of a moment that is gone, and we forget the context. And we often did not know the context of the original moment. And so we judge them based on what they communicate. And we have to deal with all aspects, whether it's fashion or documentary or journalism. And the art question is provocative, and it hurts when we have to answer it. But it hurts in a good way.
The one area where it's very apparent, of course, is in the auction market, because, you know, in contemporary art and photography, they're always fighting about Cindy Sherman and Thomas Struth and Gursky, where they should go, and they always go in the contemporary art auctions, which is why photography auctions often raise very much less than contemporary art, and that's exactly where, you know, it is very much hotly contested, how these people are defined in the auction market.
that gives me an opportunity to say that when I meet an artist who does not want to be in a regular photo sale, I say, ciao.
Joaquim, quer responder?
Olha, eu concordo com o que disse o Jeff, porque o tempo é uma coisa tão misteriosa, a passagem do tempo, que ela fatalmente embeleza as fotografias, exatamente por esse distanciamento. Você olha para uma fotografia como aquela que eu falei do Zé Medeiros, que era um índio com uma cachoeira ao fundo. Aquele índio parece que está absolutamente integrado naquela paisagem. É uma paisagem linda. Ele também é uma pessoa com uma figura bonita. Talvez seja até uma imagem romantizada. Não tem como você não achar aquela fotografia bela, bonita. Aliás, eu queria apenas citar uma pequena frase da Susan Sontag, em que ela diz: o triunfo mais verdadeiro que obteve a fotografia foi a sua capacidade para descobrir a beleza. Então, hoje eu tive uma discussão muito interessante com o Silvio Frota, colecionador. Muito boa conversa. Eu não o conhecia, nós acabamos nos encontrando e colocamos essa questão da verdade, da beleza, do fotojornalismo ou da fotografia como arte, né? Que é o que existe muito mais hoje em dia no mercado de arte. Então, eu comentei com ele que, por mais que o fotojornalista seja comprometido com a verdade, uma verdade que é completamente fictícia, graças a Deus que a fotografia entrou num outro campo em que a ficção existe, em que o fotógrafo não sente o peso da fidelidade absoluta com a realidade, isso liberou a fotografia para coisas incríveis. Mas mesmo a fotografia absolutamente real, você olhar uma fotografia que foi feita há 50 anos atrás, há 100 anos atrás, você não estava vivo. Talvez seu pai não estivesse vivo, sua mãe não estivesse vivo. Então, essa consciência do tempo, ela transforma completamente a nossa percepção da fotografia. Então, é uma vantagem que esse meio, que é ao mesmo tempo tão hábil no realismo, tão criticado por esse realismo, sobretudo no início da fotografia, porque, de uma certa maneira, o aparecimento da fotografia desordenou o mercado dos desenhistas, das gravuras, né, nas quais os pintores se baseavam. Os pintores passavam horas pintando uma paisagem. Vai lá, o fotógrafo tira aquilo no instante. Por isso, os detratores da fotografia, no início da fotografia, disseram e fotografia não é arte porque é uma coisa mecânica. Mecânica nada, tem um olho por trás, tem uma visão de mundo, né?
Posso fazer uma provocação? Posso provocar? Tirando essas respostas poéticas que vocês deram, o quanto o fato de vocês escolher um fotógrafo o transforma em artista ou o tira do mercado da arte se não for escolhido?
Yeah, of course. Everybody we choose for our program, we're very aware that even though we like to think as a small institution, we're not creating a canon or endorsing a canon. Often we like to be thinking that we're questioning a canon. We know that we're not really. We're part of the ecology, and just by choosing that artist over another artist, we are supporting their career, we're endorsing them, and that, of course, that's an enormous responsibility. Coming back to what Jeff said about every work that he has to make a decision about collecting, it's an enormous responsibility. It's not something we do lightly, and that's why we have to really, as a collection of curators, be very careful about the judgments we make and the decisions we decide, especially with living artists. That is where it is most difficult.
I have a little parable to share. So I noticed something about 15 years ago, that young artists that we were acquiring for the Met, maybe the first time they're coming to the Met's collection, when I would see them again, I noticed that they had not updated their biography to include the Met's name in their list of collections in which they were. And I asked finally why one did. Well, I want to be an artist, and I will never be collected by the Museum of Modern Art if it says that I've been collected by the Metropolitan first. So these things do have meaning, so in weird ways. I think we're past that now, and I just suggest to the artists in the room that being collected by a public institution is a way that your work is seen in the context of your peers and your descendants. And we take this really seriously. And, but we're not collecting your work so that you will become famous. We are not trying to propel your career into the stratosphere. That's what your gallery is for. The museum world is something else. And we show your work, we love it, we care for it, we protect it, we try to learn from it. And the market is another thing. I actually think that it's complicated today in a way that it was not complicated before. But I think the institutions that I've been to in Brazil, the ones I've visited around the world, that collect photography do so for the same reasons generally. And I think they're pretty good reasons. And so we want your works in our collection, and we want you to make pictures that make us want to put them in the collection. Okay.
Muito obrigada. Encerramos agora pelo tempo. Esperamos vocês, então, amanhã para o segundo encontro, nesse mesmo não, às 16h30, nesse mesmo local. Obrigada a todos e até amanhã.